operational efficiencies with accounts payable automation. I see a lot of people have joined in today's session. I would like to welcome Archana for this one as well. So Archana, welcome aboard for this webinar. And
thank you,
I
Sucheta.
see you on camera now. Okay. Now, in today's webinar, we want to touch base on the accounts payable automation and how it really boosts the operational efficiencies. We also want to talk about how at Stralynn, we are focused on creating a rich portfolio of digital and business transformation services. And we are really excited to kick off our series of webinars, which will be focused on business critical issues, business transformations, enhancing operational efficiencies, and our very favorite data first approach that we really live and breathe at Stralynn. I am your moderator, Sucheta Singh, for this webinar. And before we plunge right into it, in order to make your webinar experience much impactful, I have a few tips for you all to follow. For any questions that keeps coming into your mind, you can start posting them under the Q&A tab, which you can see on the screen right now. And we will gladly take your questions towards the end of the webinar. Also, just for your information, this webinar is being recorded completely, so you can watch this presentation again. You can share it with your colleagues, with your friends, as this will be made available on our website, which is stralynn.com/webinars. Now, we have a lot that we wish to cover in this webinar, Archana, and therefore I'm really delighted to welcome Archana Jain, who's an expert, a business transformation leader at Stralynn. To talk about Archana, I would say she's managed multiple business transformations with the leading digital technologies. She's a senior technology leader with 20 plus years of global experience in the IT industry. Under her leadership, she has led multiple CRM, ERP implementations for lead to cash, process optimizations, and digitization. Welcome, Archana. I would like to welcome you again. And before we get right into this webinar, a very important question that I'm really curious about is, as for you, what is the role or impact of such automations on business or organization as a whole, or even for that matter, business leaders?
Thank you, Sucheta. And like you said, with my 2 decades of experience in this area, I've absolutely enjoyed the journey that organizations have taken with automation transformations that they have enabled in their organization. Happy to share that experience today in this webinar and looking forward to being a part of the series that we have started at Stralynn as our webinar series. So talking about automation, Sucheta, it's important to understand, there are so much of automation going on today. These are not just IT implementation, but actually business transformations, and they all come under the larger umbrella of digital transformation. Today, every organization who really wants to excel in their industry, and of course, everybody does, right? They're looking to really run their operations very efficiently and grow their sales by 10x, 20x, whatever percentage of growth they're expecting. But they don't expect the operational cost to grow that proportionately. That is their fear factor. Will my operations start costing that much more as I grow? And to keep those costs under control, the leaders of today, they are really looking at these transformations to enable them to contain the cost as well as ensure that all these processes are scalable. I can tell you from our experience at Stralynn and from all the experience that we have had, today we are working with organizations to enable their CRM, ERP, RPA, automations for their various processes, their partner enablement portal through which they can engage with their suppliers and all. Their major goal is to keep their operational costs under control, and we are working with them very closely to enable their processes. So leaders need to be aware that, while growth will happen, use these transformation journeys to run your operations very efficiently.
Right. And these days, business leaders are also focused on creating a better experience, be it for their end customers or be it for their vendors or partners, right?
Absolutely. Suppliers are no longer considered just suppliers. They are partners. They are supposed to be your partner in your growth. And having a good, strong relationship is equally important as having a strong relationship with your customers. So you're absolutely right. Yes, we have to take care of that aspect as well.
Very well said. So just to reiterate again to the audience, please take advantage of the Q&A tab. Keep posting your questions and that we would like to take up in the end. Right with this, I'll not take up much of your time, Archana. The stage is all yours.
Thank you, Sucheta. So just looking at the objectives of the session today, we want to cover four main things. What does AP automation or accounts payable automation include in its overall scope? What are the efficiency gains that we can see as part of going for an automation? How does any organization get ready for doing an automation journey? And we'll talk more specifically about AP automation in this case. And how do you make sure this automation journey is successful, right? How do you drive that change within your organization? 70% of failed transformation programs, they fail. Why? Because the organization itself is not ready. The IT implementation is successful, but organizations fail to still make their program successful. So we'll look at all these aspects. At the same time, we'll also look at the future of automation in the AP area. What are the upcoming trends and what is industry looking at to further enforce this as a very low touch or zero human touch process? So let's talk about the scope of automation. What does automation mean? Automation overall is talking about automating any manual task that can be done, right? So when we talk about the accounts payable automation, we are looking at managing the invoicing process. Accounts payable is about, you purchase a product from a vendor and they have given you a PO order initially, and then they have given you an invoice after the order has been processed. And now you have to process those invoices. You have some time to pay those invoices and you make sure that you pay them on time. The invoice from various sources have to be automated. The workflow to go through the entire approval process, right? When you automate, you have a process that goes through. Today it is manual. Tomorrow we talk about making it fully automated so there is minimal human intervention. We also talk about matching the invoices, right? So you get a PO, you don't just go out and pay it, right? You match it with the invoice gets matched with the PO, the shipment details and all that. So there's a whole review and matching process that happens as part of this invoice processing method that we have to automate. And so there is a lot of effort required to ensure that every invoice is paid correctly. And for that payment, you have to make sure that the system is integrated with your ERP, be it legacy ERP, be it your latest ERP. And we make sure that all these AP in automation journey is end to end. If you do partial, there are a lot of pitfalls. You may do invoice processing as e-invoicing, but if you don't automate your workflow, you really haven't achieved the efficiency. So what I would suggest is, as any organization looking into automation, make sure you do the end-to-end process automation. And we at Stralynn have ensured that these processes have been standardized and formalized to make this automation journey a very successful and effective journey for our customers.
What steps exactly, Archana, like you at Stralynn are taking up to make sure that, we are not falling through the cracks, while we are taking care of these legacy automations, right? Moving away from legacy systems and making them more standardized.
So it's a process experience, right? We have to make sure that the process is standardized, but it is also customizable. Again, you don't reinvent the wheel every time, right? Everybody makes that journey in their own way. However, how do you make that journey smooth and you make that journey a good experience and a success? So we have developed our own methodology. We bring that methodology into the environment. We have modularized it completely. so that the entire process is fully transparent to our clients. And again, it's our USP, right? As you would say, everybody makes bread and butter, but then what is the secret sauce of the bread and butter that we bring to the table is an experience that you will have to take with us to go through that journey with us. But definitely that experience is going to be a great successful experience for our clients for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have that secret sauce with you.
Yes, and absolutely. We'll be happy to bring it to all our clients.
Perfect. Okay.
So when you look at automation, a lot of the questions still arise. Why is it required, right? And how do you go about going through that journey? So you have to definitely understand your current landscape and your challenges. And you have to define what kind of efficiencies that you're looking at by doing this kind of an automation. So if you look at the current challenges, you look at today how the manual process is working, right? You talk about the entire process being manual or bits and pieces. This causes a lot of delays, right? Because every time there's a manual intervention, it has to be approved, taken up. These delays, they are a cost impact to you. They will cause you to do late payments, and as a result, you pay late fees. And companies have been paying significant amount of money in these late payments because it is built into their contract. And vendors make sure that they are penalized if they do not make the payments on time. Also, the whole process of invoice matching, right? That is prone to any kind of mistakes because of human touch. You talk about these errors, and today, trust me, companies are spending a lot of time on correcting these processes. Almost 60 to 70% of the payment processing errors are what auditing teams are experiencing today, the accounting teams are experiencing today, and they're rectifying. So imagine the volume, Sucheta, 60 to 70% of error of invoices are error prone today, a significant cost and time that you have to spend on it.
Yeah, that's pretty massive. And we keep getting these pain points, when we are talking to our customers at Stralynn. So when we kind of connect with them, so this is where it really hurts, them, in the leg, when they're talking about business and these errors which keep coming, which really delays the entire process, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the time, these errors have become part of this bureaucratic process. Like one of the clients we worked for, when they started the automation journey, they actually were treating these errors as almost like exceptions to be handled. And they
Wow.
didn't really know that the processes could be streamlined so much to eliminate these errors, not about including them in the system. So that's the experience that, these automation journeys have to be for our clients.
Right. And I'm sure these webinars will really help us in terms of creating that awareness among the business leaders, right?
Absolutely. We have to do that. Also think about the paperwork, right? When you are doing manual processes, the paperwork is incomplete, it is incorrect, and the back and forth that we do with suppliers to correct the processes and the paperwork and the data, that takes up so much of time. There is a lot of effort wasted also. There's a lot of frustration. Employees get frustrated. They're like, I'm doing the same thing again and again, and they make the same mistake again and again, right? And I know you have run some partner sessions that you were doing in one of your programs. And I remember that, there were instances where they were talking about how much of back and forth they have to do. And
Yes.
they were looking at these automation of their process and the partner portals to eliminate all those back and forth and streamline this entire process so people can do more quality work.
Right. That's so true.
And then, of course, today there is so much of fraud and theft with the manual check payments and the paper processes. Companies are spending almost 5% of their revenue in addressing these theft related issues. Forget the time they spend on following up, doing the reports, getting the investigations done. They are putting aside almost 5% of their revenue on these fraud issues. So that can be completely eliminated through these automations with the right controls and compliances. And of course, imagine if a invoice gets misplaced, right? The accounting challenge that happens with it, and the rectifications and the corrections that you have to do, all that process takes up so much of time and effort. I'm telling you today, the AP team in any organization, if they have not automated their process, they spend close to 1/4 of their time just correcting all the errors, doing their data entries, checking it, reviewing it, and fixing those problems. So these are all the challenges today that organizations face, and all these can be overcome through automation of the AP processes.
Right, and which is a nightmare. I can just not even imagine, missing out on these invoices and kind of, going into the audit to be kind of really screwed up on that. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely right.
At this stage, Archana, I have a quick question that, is coming, across my mind. The AP processes, have become really complex these days, right? The organizations, they're scared to change the way things are. How best you think, in your experience, they can approach a transformation of these AP processes?
So, every organization has overly complicated the processes sometimes just because over time these processes have been running, getting modified, they have become complex. So, there has to be an approach to streamline these processes, look at how the process can be broken up. With our Stralynn's due diligence process that we bring to the table, we make sure that we do the initial assessment. We understand what the current challenges and risks are there with the process, and then we work to strategize it. So while the company or an organization may have been in a comfort zone with these complicated processes, there is definitely a very clear and organized way and a structured way to undo that whole bureaucracy and the complications and streamline it, and of course ensure that all their process challenges are being taken care of and the process will flow smoothly. So we do have a due diligence approach that we have defined, and we take it to our customers and they really love the process. They see an outcome at the end of the due diligence that helps them build their roadmap to get to the point where they can start their journey of automation. And that is the way to really kick off your automation processes.
Yeah, very well said, Archana. I think that makes a huge impact. Due diligence is like key to everything, to really, get into the weeds of an issue or these pain points, and to kind of bring value, ultimately to what we are trying to achieve, right?
Correct, correct. And for example, take the data entry, right? Uh, lot of customers, they still have manual data entry. And
Right.
they believe that that's the way to do it because that 2 pair, 4 pair, 6 pair eyes need to look at that data. They will not let go of that process. How do we make them let go of it, right? Then also talk about, how do you integrate or think about workflow rather, even before integration, the workflow. I was talking to this customer the other day, and we were talking about their automation of their process for AP, and they're like, we cannot do it. And we said, why? And they're like, no, we need to have that paper signature in place for approval. There is no way we can get rid of that process. So, that whole change management also becomes a key part. So when we look at due diligence, we also look at these other aspects, not just the process and the data, but the other aspects of an organization. And change management, again, is a key aspect. And we will talk about it as we go down through the webinar today. So let's talk about the efficiency gains that we see as we go through automation, right? What are the operational efficiency gains? Of course, there's a lot of them, and we can definitely talk about the gains that you see as you go through elimination of paper trail, the manual work, and all that. But let's pick a few that are really really important. We are talking about bringing in efficiency gains from cost perspective, from efficiency perspective, and from building a scalable future, right? So with the reduction in the work effort, the costs, and the time saved, there is almost 70 to 80% efficiency gain that you will see from the operational perspective. You will see an increase in the efficiency. Also, the teams will be so much happier. They don't have to do those manual tasks, right? They just get energized to do more work than do different kind of work, more value addition. And the tasks that they do are built upon their current skills. We are not asking people to learn new stuff. We are building it upon them. So you definitely see a very significant improvement, almost 30 to 40% improvement purely at an efficiency level. And these automations are built to be scalable, right? So when you talk about scalable, we talked earlier about that growth, right? Companies are talking about 10x, 20x. People are talking about 40x growth factors. I mean, that's the vision that organizations have today to stay ahead of the industry of the technology. If they don't build these automation processes and the automation systems scalable, it will collapse. So all these implementations and the journey of this project, streamlining the process, are meant to be scalable. We did that in one of our clients, right? So the assessment that we had done wasn't meant for today and tomorrow. It was meant for a architecture that will stand their growth for the next 3 years. That is the projections that they had taken. And we built that into our whole approach. And the system may be today underutilized, but it will definitely get fully utilized as they go through the growth that they're anticipating. So that's the vision that organizations need to keep in mind and keep those perspective when talking about and thinking about efficiency gains.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that is so true post-COVID. The business, they have changed drastically. They have to kind of make these changes kind of be like at the spur of the moment, they have to introduce these changes, do these transformations. Everything is all virtual, online these days, right?
Yes, and yes, you're absolutely right. This whole virtualization has moved this whole effort way ahead of where it was to just 2.5 years back. Today, it is the top priority of the organizations who really want to stay ahead in the industry. And they are doing it. They are making those changes. And we are with them to enable them to get there. So definitely that journey has started big time globally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I see that you are talking about, transparency in invoice processing and, while talking about AP automation. Now, what do you think? Like, how can we change the entire ecosystem of handling invoices? Like, invoice handling today versus invoice handling tomorrow, or like even like these days, we're using a term called e-invoicing process, right? So how do you think these are kind of related?
Yeah, so e-invoicing is the way to go. We are talking about, how do you make sure that when you have automated your system, your invoices can be processed successfully. Today, if you look at any industry, so take an example of, say, a healthcare industry, right? If they have not done their automations, they will be getting almost 1/3 of their invoices in, say, paper format. Another 1/3 could be coming in through PDF or emails, kind of a thing. The remaining could be EDI, or they might have been uploaded through some portals and all. So you can think about the different formats invoices are today being submitted by the various vendors, and organizations are accommodating all these formats because they don't have a one way of processing it either. It all depends on which BU is getting the invoice and how it reaches from there to the finance and the accounting team, right? So it's important that we standardize that and we look at invoicing to be moving towards e-invoicing. Again, it's not one day change, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Even if you automate, e-invoicing will not happen immediately. It's another journey that you go through with the larger ecosystem. You work with your suppliers to enable them to adopt that process. They may have to make some changes, or sometimes, you instead of trying to change your suppliers, you go through an OCR implementation in your organization to still process paper invoices. So there are ways to work in the larger ecosystem, but with your goal set and where you want to be, there are products, technologies available that will definitely make you a success in terms of processing your invoices as the starting point of your automation and building your data into a structured manner.
Yeah, that's
So
for
that
sure. It's a
journey
start
is there for
process.
sure.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
go
agree.
ahead.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree, more on the part that, this is absolutely the beginning, the starting point that, we have to first kind of streamline the invoicing process, which is kind of, structuring the e-invoices so that this can be processed further and we can automate it later, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just a quick slide on how invoices are handled today, right? So we talked about it. You have paper, PDF, EDI. Again, EDI is structured data, but still it requires additional effort to make sure the data is correct, complete, and all. But when you talk about e-invoicing and you have structured your invoices properly, that process definitely is streamlined now to process all that information very easily. So we are talking about moving from unstructured data to structured data. And there are technologies like OCR that can enable you. There are processes where you can templatize your invoices to make it happen.
Right. And again, I mean, Archana, again, quick question here is that, what is the correlation of data, as you're talking about unstructured data here, what is the correlation of data with automations or such transformation? What role do you think does data play in that?
The data, it is equally important. We talk about bread and butter, right? Data is the bread and butter of every organization also. Data cannot be ignored in any such kind of a program. It has to be considered right at the beginning. Stralynn has our own data first approach, a methodology where when we do these kind of programs, we take into consideration the data piece of it right early in the program. We make our customers aware of why data is important to be considered, not something to come down the road. I'm telling you just a recent program that we have been managing. It was supposed to go live last year. And one of the major delays of that program that delayed it to more than 3 to 4 months was purely data. Ownership of data was missing. Accountability to migrate the complete data was missing. And that whole step was initiated so late in the game that there was no way that they could shortchange that whole process and do it faster. So data first approach is an important step in our methodology to ensure that these are going through fine. And unstructured data is always there in any system, right? You cannot ignore it, but the process to structure it is equally important to ensure that you know to move from unstructured to structured data. And that becomes a key part of streamlining your processes as well, right? There are certain requirements. When you do OCR, there are certain quality requirements, the quality of the images that are being processed, a 70 DPI versus 150 DPI, what is the size, what is the resolution that you need. All these are important aspects, and they have to be considered early upfront to decide what your automation process should consist of. And that's why data is critical, cannot be ignored, absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the leaders talking about it, and they were saying data in today's business world is the superpower that any organization can have. So I can completely believe that part.
Yeah.
Another question again, Archana, before we kind of, jump into the other section of it. I've heard that, industry report these days, they say a lot about failed transformations, right? Based on your experience, how do you think organizations should approach AP automation or any such, transformations?
Yeah, it's interesting, if you look at the statistics, and anybody can Google it and find the numbers, how many transformations are failing. The numbers vary anywhere from 50 to 70% of transformation programs actually fail. And it does put a fear factor in a lot of the organizations, and they think a lot before starting such programs. And sometimes I see that whole process of just taking a decision takes 6 months to decide whether to go for a transformation or a automation journey. The key reasons why these transformations fail is because of the expectation that sometimes the management thinks these are just IT projects and they need to be handled as IT project. That is so untrue. Organizations and the leadership of the organizations have to consider these as business and IT transformation. They have to go hand in hand. And organizations need to make sure that the business processes are being considered and they are evaluated initially to ensure that the system that is being brought into place will handle their business, will handle the changes in the business, and will make the processes repeatable, right? If you don't consider it, talking about an IT project or an IT implementation, you will actually end up doing IT support for the current processes more than the new streamlined processes. And you don't want that, right? So that is one reason why it doesn't succeed, because you actually have not met your transformation objectives. Another big one, and I may sound repeating myself, but that is true, is change management. 40% of projects fail because of change management not being taken as a priority. When we do our process setup, we ensure that change management is being addressed from day one. If you remember that one project that you were driving, I remember your approach was to make change management your part of your risk and your initial assessment. Maybe you can say a few things about that, but that definitely addresses the concern that today employees have about not knowing what is coming, and as a result, not accepting the change. And we'll talk about change management a little bit down the webinar, but that's a key point. These are two key factors that we need to take care of before starting an automation journey.
Absolutely. And again, that brings me to another thing that, at Stralynn, so how do you think you make that difference while you're addressing your customers' pain points and helping them undergo those, digital transformations or business transformations?
Yeah, so we definitely adopt a lot of innovative ways, right? There is no run-of-the-mill solution for everything. While there are standardized processes, we come in with our innovative ways to look at an organization, understand their pain points, help them understand what their challenges are. Sometimes, the challenge is right in front of them, but they don't see it as a challenge, right? So make them realize that, these are things that can be overcome, and we work with them very closely to overcome them. Stralynn is very close to the operations of any customer that we are working with. And getting that proximity to their operations helps us not only address those challenges, keep their cost to a minimum when doing these kind of programs, but also look at it with a fresh set and an innovative way of accessing or addressing those problems and challenges. So definitely we come with our tools and accelerators and work with the customers to address the gaps that they have in starting a journey for automation. Forget about going through the journey, even to get kick-started. The whole decisions making cycle can definitely be reduced once you help a customer understand why this journey or why this transformation is important, and how they see the light at the end of the tunnel, if I may say it in that way, and we make sure it happens.
No, I completely agree with that. All right, audience, keep posting your questions, keep coming them. We would like to take them up in the end.
All right, so let's look at the planning for an EP automation. We have been talking about, starting the journey, right? So how does an organizer start the planning process? Where do they start? How do they ensure that, the things that they're looking at are required for them, right? You have to you have to measure what you have today. You have to look at your invoicing volume, your processing times, how the workflow is working, what are the manual touch points in your workflow. Today, what your controls are to ensure that, the checkpoints are there, and what are the reporting. Every department wants a report, right? Finance wants their report, accounting wants their report, the BUs want their report. And how do you make sure that all these are captured appropriately? So before we go to the next step, let me give you an example. So we were sitting in this due diligence session, right? We went through the business process and everything, and there was this lady who was just like, being a part of the meeting but not really participating. And then after everybody has shared their input, she started, and wow, she talked about reporting. She's like, nothing is working in reporting. Nobody gets a right report. Nobody knows what is going on. So you can imagine the frustration of a BU who is not having the transparency and visibility into that report. It's a completely a module by itself that needs to be addressed. But to get to the right reporting, you have to make it a part of an initial analysis. Reporting is an ongoing process, but do not ignore it up front, right? So keep that perspective in mind. Then you start strategizing. Once you have your due diligence done, your initial metrics, processes, everything in place, You look at, how can you strategize the entire invoice processing method? If you look at the end-to-end process, you can modularize it, but you can also centralize it, right? Look at the various departments involved, the various BUs involved, how you can centralize it to the right departments only, reduce or simplify your workflow, right? You build upon the skill of your teams, but you also make sure that you are simplifying that whole process. And as part of this new process, what are your controls and compliances, right? So you make sure that you're taking all the factors and strategizing your roadmap to kickstart your transformation or your automation. And then you look at your data component, you look at digitizing it, you look at how the unstructured invoices can be structured, like we talked about the various formats of the invoices. You look at the purchase orders because every invoice has to be compared, right? How you can automate that whole comparison, the checkpoints, the reviews. How do you make sure it is a low touch point, not a high manual touch point? There are ways to do it. We talked about the OCR and all. So there are RPA, robotic process automation. There are a lot of very strong products that are available that can make you do RPA successfully. And you can also make sure that you are integrating with your ERP successfully. Just jumping ahead to RPA, we can look at how RPA can enable it for you, right? So when you look at this whole planning phase, if you're considering RPA as one of your solutions, they provide a very high data accuracy. This client of ours who was looking into RPA earlier, they had started this journey actually almost 3 years, 4 years back. And they were looking at a very high accuracy rate of greater than 92%. The earlier RPA products were doing only 70%, 60% accuracy, but they kept revisiting it because it was so important for them. And today they're looking at products which give them that high accuracy of 90+%. So the maturity has come into the products and solutions that are available in the market. And we and Stralynn have partnered with some of those RPA product vendors to enable that RPA to be implemented successfully within your organization, right from business process to your technology implementation. And we bring that expertise with our consultants to your organization. You can do centralized data management. You can, of course, do repeatable processes, and you can make sure that these are all scalable. So RPA with itself brings a lot of value addition. I know in the future webinars, Sucheta, we'll talk about RPA in more detail, and we'll also bring in some of our product vendors to talk with us about how RPA can help the organizations.
Yeah, that is right. So audience, stay tuned for the next webinar on RPA. Okay.
Excellent. Now, ERP integration is also, again, a very key feature, right? We have legacy or ERPs in some organizations. We have ERP with the latest and the greatest. Sometimes you may see overlap between ERPs, between the functionality of ERP and AP automation, but don't let that stop you from going through an automation journey. You have to make sure your APIs with your ERP are in place. Once your invoicings are processed, approvals are done, the payments can be made seamlessly with your ERP integration. So make sure that is happening. Gives you a lot of advantages. You can auto upload your invoices, right? Your master data is intact. Of course, besides data transparency, your data integrity is maintained. That is so important. We talk about errors, right? All that is taken care of, and your ERP has good data, and your BUs get to see good data, right? So reporting concerns are also addressed. And of course, the whole improved life cycle that you see. So this whole integration with ERP is a very important feature. So do not park it as a backbencher. Make sure it is part of your entire assessment and your roadmap for doing your AP automation.
Right.
All right, so talking about driving change, right? We have the plan, we want to go ahead with it, but do you really think you'll be successful if you don't think about how your organization will accept it? You are setting yourself up for failure for sure. But you have to understand the challenges, why change management is important. A lot of organizations, they don't give that they don't feel that it is important enough to get the buy-in from your employees. That is so untrue. You have to have your employee buy-in, right? They have to understand that their way that they were handling these paper invoices or in PDF invoices are now going to get digitized. So how does that structured data look like? How do you adopt the new technology, right? You're talking about new workflows. They have to know where to click, who to approve, who to follow up with. That whole roles will change, right? You have to look at the supplier adoption ecosystem. How are your suppliers reacting? Are they okay to adopt your new process, or do you have to put some intermittent solutions to help them go through that process of adopting your processes, right? And then, of course, with role changes, there is a fear factor. People may think, I will become redundant. I do not want to accept this. No, you're not becoming redundant. You are actually upskilling yourself. You're going to do more value added work, right? And you have to make sure that your company culture adopts to it. So at Stralynn, when we do change management, we have a very robust change management process. We bring that in and we make it a part of the roadmap of the project plan. It talks about every session that has to be done with the employees. And we do interactions with the employees to make sure that they're giving feedback as the interactions are happening with them. So, and we make sure that, this company culture aspect is getting addressed and the people are ready to adopt the new company culture. Very important aspect for any organization.
That is so critical. I mean, of course, change, as everyone says, is not very comfortable, like at the beginning, but slowly and steadily, it's like when you kind of make them very comfortable, that is when, it takes a little time for people to adopt to the new methods and ways of doing business and change their, daily work and daily jobs. Another question that I have here, Archana, for you is, do you believe that AP automation, or like for that matters, any such similar automations should be a part of critical business decisions by the C-suite executives or leaders?
Today, like I said, all these transformation programs, they're not IT projects, right? These are business transformation projects. They come with the IT component, but all these business transformation, they definitely require the involvement of your top level management, right? So when you are looking at a transformation journey, you have to see the top level management as the sponsor of these programs. The messaging has to come down from them that, we are looking at changing our organization to move towards better setup for our own people as well as for our ecosystem of suppliers and our customers, right? It also addresses a key factor that, employees are much more engaged, they are much more involved if the critical business decisions are coming from the top level. So definitely, I see it as very critical. And we work with that steering comms, with that C-level teams to ensure that they are fully engaged and they are bringing in their thought process and their experience to communicate with the people. So it is not the managers who are talking to the team and saying, hey, your role will change. You'll do something different once this project rolls out. It is coming from your CFOs, from your CEO, in fact, from your CIOs and the entire C-suite who are involved, engaged. They get involved in, ensuring that all these testings are happening successfully. If you remember one of the project, the initial user testing, right, that used to happen, the chief financial officer and the CIO both would be in the same room,
Right.
watching how the user testing is going on before the approvals for rollout were happening. So that level of engagement is very, very important. And it is happening today. Organizations are accepting that and moving forward with making sure C-level takes ownership.
Yeah, and I think somewhere these, C-suite executives and these leaders, they, accept the fact, they realize it, that, it is really needed and the need of the hour to kind of, come up with these efficiencies, and these gains into the processes. But somewhere, I think, as you mentioned earlier, that there are so much, failed transformations that, they're a little scared and skeptical in terms of adopting these new automations, right?
Yes, very much so. But you have to structure the change, right? there is a process to it. It's not random. It's not like 5 sessions or 3 sessions will do it. It has to be done in a very structured way. And change management itself has become a science by itself. Organization like ours, we bring in our change managers to drive these. We work with the executives of the organization, we work with the teams of the organization, we work with the technical teams, and we work with the business process owners to make it happen. We talked about the sponsorship at the C level. You have to get the teams involved early enough. The employees should be involved early enough, share the vision, the objectives of these programs, so they have a say in it. They see the goals as shared goals, not something that is being pushed upon them. Watch to see how the behavior will change, right? Maintain a two-way communication with them, listen to them, right? Understand their challenges. They are at the ground level doing the work. They may get frustrated that, why are you changing my process? I know my supplier will not understand it. I'll have to spend hours convincing them how you can help them overcome that challenge, right? We have had so many sessions, if you remember, with this client of ours, where it was all about addressing the challenges at the ground root. If I remember, the risk register itself, there was like 2 pages or 2 sheets long, if I have to say that, right?
Yes.
But they were all very valid points, and they all had to be mitigated. Without that, there was no way we were going to get a sign off, right? And those have to be addressed upfront. Otherwise, you can just imagine the delays in the program because there is no sign off happening. But
And
also,
that's
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's so true, Archana. I think because change management is something that we have been very, I think, careful about, right? Talking about any of these implementations that we have worked at Stralynn. I completely remember, like with one of our clients, change management is so critical that, if it is not done kind of, in a smooth and seamless manner, this can really break up the entire process and an entire business in itself. So I remember that, we did that change management, and this was right from the time of inception on, in terms of that we have to work on this implementation, right? So it's like we started working on, the change management process right in the beginning of the stages, right? Which because of course it takes a lot of time for the new users and the existing users to adopt these new processes. So we have to start prepping them up early in the stages and making them more comfortable with it, right? So that it doesn't feel like a change in itself, right?
Yes. But remember, Sucheta, change management does not end with the go live of a program, right?
Absolutely.
There
Yeah.
has to be follow up. There has to be follow up. You're not talking about, implement the system, convince the users this is the system, they're okay with it. You get the sign off, you train them, and you roll out the system. It's not the end. This is where the next phase starts, right? You have to bring a change in the behavior. You do that through multiple ways. You have to recognize the impact of the system that has been rolled out. So you see, like, processing time went down from, say, 2 months to 2 weeks, right? You recognize that, you appreciate it, you publicize it, that people see it, and that encourages other people to adopt it, right? Uh, you have to sustain the change. You have to make sure that, because of some challenges or issues, people are not rolling back to the old system or the old way or developing a parallel system of spreadsheets and all, if you remember how often that happens, right?
Yeah.
So this is all part of change management. So do not think change management ends today. And that is where we feel that, hand holding your users as a continuation of a program after the rollout is equally important. And we do that as part of our process. So a structured change management process is very, very important, right?
I completely agree with you. That's so true.
So, Sucheta, we covered the main objectives today that we had, but I also want to talk a little bit about the future of AP automation, right? Where is this whole AP automation going? It is not something that is started and kind of, at the point where it has matured completely. There's a lot of work that is still going on to take it to the next level. It has become a necessity. It is no longer an option. I'll tell you, AP is one of the more processes that started much later in the automation journey. It's a back office process. People think it's happening fine, no issues, numbers are done, balance sheets are done, why worry? It is no longer like that. It has become a necessity. There is a lot of cost savings, time savings, and improvements that can be done. And it is happening now. It is no longer a back office again. It is also becoming a business value center. Today, if you think about it, we work with this customer where they are constantly looking at how to monetize their data. While data monetization can come from subscribers, can come from customers, can come from, the volumes of transactions that we create, invoicing and this whole AP process is also helping in the monetization. There are certain things that can be monetized without getting into any kind of confidential and conflict kind of situations, but it is becoming a business value center. Reporting is becoming critical. So these are becoming very important aspects, right? AI and ML are coming in, making these processes more automated, moving it from a low touch to a zero touch process. So there is so much of work going on over there that cannot be ignored today. And organizations have to start adopting them to further not only fuel that sales, but also keep reducing their operational cost, right? And of course, operational efficiency, it has become crucial for growth and revenue. Grow 100 times, but reduce your operational cost by another 10%, another 20%, right? That's the expectation. So it's a never ending journey. And I'm very happy to say that at Stralynn, we have adopted all these automation journeys and we have brought in that expertise to ensure that these transformation programs will be successful. We make it a very transparent process. We handhold the business, we handhold the technology, and we make sure that we take you through a very successful and a very exciting journey. And I'm really looking forward to getting more such journeys down the road, working with our customers.
Absolutely. Way to go. So, Archana, again, talking about future of AP automation, I'm really curious to know how do you think, like, how mature is the AP automation industry and how effective they actually are?
So AP automation has grown a lot, right? Uh, you talk to startups today, okay? So startups don't have legacy systems, right? They are not going to that manual paper processing. They maybe do it initially, but they quickly switch to products, right? So if I think about the maturity of the automation industry and what kind of products and all out there are lots of products available which do complete end to end and they enable you to integrate with your ERP, right? I mean, we also started off similarly. We didn't want to get into these paper processing, hire a back office and all. We jumped into getting the right tool into our environment and ensuring that our accounts are being handled effectively and we don't have to worry about, watching them, manually monitoring them, run reports and make sure your data is all accurate and all. So the industry has matured. Clients are looking forward to these products being readily available, taking them in-house, working with consultants like ours, and making sure that they can be brought easily into their environment. So a lot of work has already been done in the industry, Sucheta, from that perspective.
Perfect. I know we are in the last leg. We have just 5 minutes left, but and I know we cannot conclude the entire session in 5 minutes. But my last question to you, Archana, is what will be your advice to the business leaders around AP automation or any such transformations?
Well, my advice, better late than never, right? AP automation is the need of the hour, and we have to make sure that we start looking at it as a necessity, like we talked about. COVID has shown that more than enough number of times. There have been so many challenges trying to do stuff remotely. Vendors have got frustrated. They are not able to get payments. They have to stop sometimes production or delivery, right? Fulfillments have not happened because of delayed payments. So we are more than willing to work with the business leaders to help them realize the importance of automating their AP and their AR processes. Don't just think of AP as AP. Start extending it to your AR processes as well, right? How do you make sure your clients pay you well, pay you on time? and make sure that you are automating that process as well and working with your clients to ensure you get your payments fast. You know, clients are looking at the unit cost of processing an invoice, right? So where it could have been, say, 2 cents for an invoice or 5 cents, I'm just throwing out numbers here. There are data available that shows today what each invoice costs, right? They are looking to reducing it by more than half, reducing the processing time for each invoice by more than half. And we have to make sure that, each leader understands the type of savings that they can bring, control their cost, and at the same time, fuel their growth with those operational efficiencies. So definitely, this is the way to go. At Stralynn, we are there to work with you, bring in those efficiencies for you, and also enable you to ensure that you see that very transparently in what time frame, what is the ROI, and how you will achieve it. And definitely that's my advice. Go for it. 100%.
Yes, go for it. I will also vouch for it, Archana. Okay, all right. So for the upcoming webinars, audience, like, we need to please stay tuned for more information around such transformations and automations. We have a lot of webinars coming up. So for the month of May, you have an RPA process, which is the robotic process automation webinar coming up for you. The other one that we have in pipeline is the role of IT in driving automation in AP and AR and even lead to cash processes. So stay tuned for that. You can always follow us on LinkedIn and visit our website, which is stralynn.com, for any such information and even for the recordings, as I mentioned earlier. Archana, it's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you around these key business value-driven opportunities and transformations. Thank you. Thank you so much for the great insights. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Sucheta. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Thanks, everyone.